People of neuromonitoring, David Zimmerman is on fire.
Oh, I just triggered some animation there.
Yeah. He is the education coordinator for Accurate Neuromonitoring, based out of NYC. And he has made a ton of contributions to the neuromonitoring field of late. From his recent talk at the Southern Society of Electroneurodiagnostic Technologists in San Antonio, Texas, to serving as an adjunct professor at Laboure College IONM boot camp in Boston, Massachusetts. People like David Zimmerman drive neuromonitoring education forward and make a positive impact on our field. He even found time to design our cool new intro video. Talk about extreme.
So David Zimmerman really has been having a positive impact on the field of neuromonitoring lately. But there's one contribution in particular that really stands out to me as vital for us all to learn from. You see, for us to do our job effectively and have a positive impact on patient care, we in neuromonitoring need one crucial element, and that is effective communication with the entire operating room team during a significant event. Now, this means our communications need to be simple, timely, and actionable. These communications need to be relayed from an oversight physician, usually remotely, to a surgical neurophysiologist in the room, such as myself, onto the surgical team and the anesthesia team. Now, the good news is this. There is already a system in place which is widely used at hospitals across the country that speak to this need to communicate valuable information in a timely fashion in a very tense situation when outcomes are riding on people acting on accurate information. And that system is called TeamSTEPPS. David Zimmerman is a student of this philosophy in the workplace in healthcare, and he's been teaching the rest of us in the field how to apply it in those critical moments when there's a change in our data, and we need to relay this information to the surgeon and the anesthesia team so that they can quickly grasp the implications and make timely interventions that allow for the best possible outcome of the surgery. So let's go meet Dave and find out some more.
This is the IONM for Life Adventures in Neuromonitoring podcast. I am your host, Scott Moore. Thank you for joining us on another adventure in neuromonitoring. With me today is a special guest, an individual who has been quite busy on behalf of the field of IONM recently. From Boston to New York, from New York down to Texas, and back again to New York, we're going to follow the further adventures of Accurate Neuromonitoring's own IONM educator, David Zimmerman. David, I welcome you to the program, sir.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be welcomed and to be a part of this. Thank you.
All right, so Dave, let's talk about you. So tell us a little bit about you. How did you get involved in neuromonitoring? Tell us about your general background.
Sure. My IONM origin story is, I think it's a little unique, but the more I speak with people and the longer I've been in this, it seems like everyone has their own unique introduction into intraoperative neuromonitoring. But mine in particular, really all begins in high school and college when, as like an extracurricular job, I was one of those AV guys. I was one of the techies who had all the equipment, and we would come and we would set up, whether it was a school dance or a fashion show or a band or a play. We worked for the little student production company that had all the equipment. So the microphones, the speakers, the lighting, the mixing board, the CD player at that time. I know I'm dating myself now, but all the wires, right? All the cables which went off in different directions. And I would sit down in front of this center console, and I had all these wires sending and receiving information. And there was a show. There was whatever the event was, that was what was important. Nobody cared how the electricity worked, but when that light went down in the middle of the dance recital, I was the one crawling backstage trying to figure out what connection was broken and how to get the light back on so the show could continue. So you may have discovered that some of these troubleshooting tools and the thought process behind troubleshooting is shockingly similar to what we have to go through in the operating room. So I was very pleasantly surprised to find that I kind of was already trained for this just because of the extracurricular job that I had throughout high school and college. The idea of troubleshooting under pressure and keeping that diagram in your mind's eye so that when you try to figure out where the problem is, you can do that quickly. That I was already good at. And I was also studying neuroscience. So I graduated from college. I had my degree in neuroscience that I didn't know what to do with. Like so many others, I thought I was going to go to medical school. I thought I was going to get my PhD in research. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I spent a lot of time in labs doing research on, animal models, and I really didn't want to work with mice anymore. I didn't want to be stuck in a basement with headphones on for, 8 to 10 hours a day, working with pipettes. And, lab research is incredibly important. It's just not for me. You have to have a certain kind of personality for it. And I figured out that it wasn't mine. Then I wanted to work with humans. I figured I should try and work with actual people who can respond to me and that I can try and help in a real way. So that's when I went towards physical therapy. I thought that was a very good career path. And it just so happened that the physical therapy office that I was working in was one floor beneath a neuromonitoring company. And by dumb luck, the guy who was running that company came down to speak with my boss at the time on a lunch break. And he was like, "Hey, Dave, you should talk to him. You like neuroscience." And that's when I first learned about intraoperative neuromonitoring. And it was one of those moments where it was just like, mind exploding, because I didn't know that this was an actual field. I didn't know that this was a real thing. And at the same time, I kind of thought I already knew how to do it, because I had all that experience with the troubleshooting and using computers, and then also neuroscience. And as I was studying physical therapy, I was learning about nerves and muscles and anatomy and how it all interplays. So, really, it was luck that kind of got me into neuromonitoring. I'm confident saying that I was prepared when that day happened, but I had no idea that neuromonitoring was a real field and something that I could actually pursue. And that's really what got me motivated to pursue education and become an educator inside of neuromonitoring, is because I do want to try to give back and maybe reach that 19 to 22-year-old version of myself in college who's doing all these things, who could go right for neuromonitoring instead of wasting, I think it was like 6.5 years not knowing that I should have been doing neuromonitoring in the first place.
You couldn't ask for a better footprint to fit neatly into the neuromonitoring box, and you had all that.
Who knew?
Yeah,
who knew? No one told me.
That's it. And that's really, isn't that our battle half the time, is just getting people to know we're out there, we're a career option, and obviously, you can have an excellent career making a huge difference in healthcare, in surgery, in neuromonitoring, but you just got to.
If only there was a podcast that I could have gotten awareness from.
Exactly. Well, so Dave, you've been on Living the Adventure lately. You've been down into Texas for the SCT conference. You have been up to Boston. Where you're an adjunct professor at Laboure College with the neuromonitoring boot camp with Dr. Faisal Jahangiri. You've been quite busy. So recently, David, you spoke at the SSET conference in San Antonio, Texas. Tell us about that. How was the conference?
That was my first time at a Southern Society meeting. That was an amazing conference. So Claire Gale, now the past president of the Southern Society and one of my colleagues through Laboure, and also a good friend of mine at this point, she asked me to come down and give one of my talks. And I was so, honored and pleased to go and do it. Yeah, that was just a really fun time. That was my first time in San Antonio, and that was a really good convention. The quality of speakers, the number of people that were there, and the quality of them was pretty high. It almost seemed like it was a national meeting, a national conference, ASNM or ASET level of quality. That was a really good time. What I had been asked to do, I actually gave two presentations while I was there. The first one was on TeamSTEPPS. TeamSTEPPS is it's a system of communication that was developed by the American Hospital Association, the AHA, in conjunction with many other organizations, the United States military, the Federal Aviation Authority, DARPA, Department of Energy, Department of Defense. And essentially, it is a system of communicating, and it is designed for these fields that, one, communication is extremely important, and two, it is time sensitive. So it's super important that if you have something to say, if you have an alert or a message or something related to patient care, or your nuclear reactor is about to go hot, or your plane is, the motor is not working, whatever it is, it matters that you communicate this effectively and timely. You have to say it. You have to say it in a way that is heard. The listener has to hear you, and you have to do it quickly. So that's what TeamSTEPPS is all about. I went for TeamSTEPPS training last year, and it was mostly designed for hospitals in particular, or the healthcare system in particular. But there wasn't a big focus on the operating room environment, which, as we very well know, is a whole different animal than the ICU or the general floors and other departments inside of hospitals. The operating room provides its own unique challenges. So I took the TeamSTEPPS presentation and modified it to suit the operating room, and in particular, intraoperative neuromonitoring. So that was the presentation that I gave at Southern Society. I think it went over well. I got some good feedback for it.
Absolutely.
But it's one of those topics that doesn't get a lot of attention, but everyone agrees we have to do better at. Communicating is so important and so integral to our job, right? We have to deliver alerts. Sometimes we're delivering bad news to our surgeons, and it's not enough to just write, surgeon informed and acknowledged. We have to actually make sure the surgeons hear what we're trying to tell them. And of course, we have to document this whole process. And, it's not just for covering ourselves or covering the surgeon. Ultimately, it's about patient care, and it's about improving the quality of patient care. And you can't have communication breakdowns if you're trying to positively affect patient care. One of the things I don't like during conventions, or at least when I give a talk at a convention, is to just have a one direction dialogue where I'm talking and hopefully people are listening, but maybe they're falling asleep. So having some sort of built-in interactive component is always something that I try to incorporate.
The more we have of that kind of environment in conferences, the better. Otherwise, it could be an online webinar and everyone could sit there and just watch the slide deck go by.
Yeah.
But I mean, having that in-person interaction and having that hands-on experience, like you're talking about, and getting people engaged in the actual learning process really augments their ability to absorb the information and take home some significant key takeaways, key points, so to speak. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic addition to your talks.
Yeah, that's the whole hope, is that people remember it and they come away with the information that you gave, and using, personal anecdotes and stories and getting people involved is one of the ways to break through, barriers to communication, which is, one of my slides in the TeamSTEPPS presentation. We don't have to go through that now, but obviously if anyone is interested in TeamSTEPPS, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to provide more information, because there is lots of it out there, almost too much sometimes, when you're going through all the bibliographies and you're seeing just the amount of data that they collected in order to create this program. It works, but it only works if everyone is doing it. It's a very simple system, and I don't want people to think that because it's simple, it's not effective. In fact, it's the opposite. Because it's so simple, it is so effective, but only if everyone from the top down is doing it. So from, the low level, custodian or neuromonitoring tech, all the way through the ranks to the surgeon and CEO of the hospital, everyone has to be on the same page. Everyone has to be familiar with this common language so that when it's used in these critical moments, people know what to do. They know to listen to it, and for that to trigger action and take that action to benefit our patients.
Well said. I've said this time and time again. The most important, most crucial and valuable element of any neuromonitoring company, no matter how big or how small, is the interaction and relationship between the person in the room and the surgeon. So basically, the CNIM and the surgeon in the room, their relationship, their ability to communicate is of vital importance to the success of what we do. And communication, effective, high context communication, is the lifeblood of that relationship, right? And basically, this is kind of the the underlying foundation of your talk at the conference. Basically, I can't tell you how many times I've had, as a team manager, I've had someone come to me, a surgeon, and say, "Well, they're telling me all this technical information, but I don't really understand what they're saying." It's like, well, what does this mean? I hear that. That's kind of like the phrase I hear a lot from surgeons sometimes. Is, what does this mean? If this person's telling me that my amplitude is 80% of baseline, tell me what that means. How can I use that? We can collect the most beautiful data in the world with the best 1020 head electrode placement and best use of filters, right? But if we're not effectively communicating what we're seeing to our oversight physicians and communicating what our oversight physicians are telling us to the surgeon and documenting that effectively, we're not doing our job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
you also have the incredible variety of human personality that we have to deal with. So not every surgeon wants to be spoken to in the same way.
Yes.
So knowing who you're dealing with and figuring out what's the best way to get that message across for this person so that our patient is better off is really the whole game. And there's no one right way to do it. You have to have some sort of emotional intelligence and situational awareness. But in those tense moments, in those moments where it is serious and it matters, you throw your ego aside, throw all that personal stuff away, because you have to get the point across. You have to say it now, and they have to hear you. So there are many tools that TeamSTEPPS provides in order to do that. And you brought up a good point. We're not just communicating in the room, we're also communicating with our online oversight. So having a system that works both for verbal communication as well as written communication is vital to the success of our job. It's not the kind of thing you're going to need to use at a cocktail party, but it's a different situation. And I think everyone, if you put yourselves in that situation, you'll agree effective communication is important. If it was your loved one that was on the table, you would want the people communicating effectively. Yes. And one of the statistics that we learn is, just the amount of the mass number of sentinel events and in some cases loss of life that comes simply from communication breakdown. And that's unacceptable, right? That's something that we can prevent. It's something we should prevent.
Yes. Agreed. I do a lot of travel in the course of my career over, oh Lord, I think I've been doing this about 17, 18 years now. And in the course of going to a new hospital, one of the things I've learned early on is ask the local team that you're supporting, so how does this surgeon want me to communicate with them? Like, you can use an example such as pedicle screw stimulation, which is, still a fairly common thing we do in neuromonitoring. So, how does that surgeon want me to communicate with them? Did they want to hear me counting out 5, 10, 15, 20? Do they just want to hear threshold is this? I mean, like, and rather than getting the surgeon caught up on, hey, there's a new person in this room and we don't have the same report that I'm, as with the person I'm used to seeing, you just got to work through that and communicate that kind of in that high context and just kind of fill the gaps as best you can by knowing what information they're going to want and how they're going to want to present it. So I really think this STEPPS program is a valuable tool for, I think, a lot of companies, a lot of educators in our field. They should be using this or something like it to communicate the importance of preparing new hires to interact with the surgical team, surgeon most importantly, of course, in an effective, respectable professional manner. I think that's something that tends to get left out of our educational programs a little bit too much. Now we obviously teach all the technical skills, right? But we also have to teach them how to professionally engage in high context, effective communication, especially in an intense environment. Now, we had just talked about how essentially we're this critical link between the oversight physician who's looking at the data, typing in interpretation to us, and we have to take that, process it, and deliver it to the surgeon in a manner that is going to convey exactly what the oversight physician wants us to say, but say it in a manner the surgeon is going to be receptive to it, be able to act on it, because none of our data matters if the surgeon doesn't take it and act on it effectively, whether it's, hey, give Decatron, raise the blood pressure, reposition the arm, back that cage out, whatever it is. I mean, we need to be able to communicate in such a manner that surgeon is going to be like, all right, I know what they're telling me. I know what I need to do as a surgeon, and I'm going to act on it. Right. And that's why like a lecture like you're giving is so valuable and impactful for new hires in our field, for anyone in our field, but particularly for new hires, to know the importance that you're not just a person sitting in the corner of the room, just there to cover, an insurance checkbox or something like that. Like, you have a crucial role.
So TeamSTEPPS, by the way, stands for Team Strategies and Tools for Enhancing Performance and Patient Safety. It's not just some weird acronym. Yeah, exactly. TeamSTEPPS is actually full of acronyms, which, the point, I guess, is to remember them. So, if you have any questions or want more information about TeamSTEPPS, you can reach out to me, or, just Google TeamSTEPPS. And you might be surprised that a lot of the hospitals that, that you're listening, that our listeners to are working in, are already using TeamSTEPPS. So, because this was designed in part with the United States military, a lot of, military institutions and hospitals and surgeons who went through military training are familiar with TeamSTEPPS and are already using TeamSTEPPS. And there are giant hospital networks that have implemented it top to bottom. So you might already find that you have been exposed to some of the practices of TeamSTEPPS, but our role in neuromonitoring, as you said, Scott, sometimes we're traveling, sometimes we are coming from a different territory, and we don't always have the luxury of working with the same team of people every single time. We have to very quickly establish that team mentality and figure out how to function as a team, even though this might be the first time we're meeting some of the people that we're working with in that operating room on that day with that surgeon for that patient.
Very well said. And again, anything we can do to not be this add-on peripheral program, that hospitals have to try to figure out where we fit. Anything we can do to integrate with what they're already doing and what they understand is extremely important. So if hospitals are using TeamSTEPPS and we're using TeamSTEPPS, how much more effectively do we fit in their workflow in such an important category as communication, right? And I work at a lot of VA hospitals. It's a privilege and an honor to work at these facilities. I guarantee you they've got to be using TeamSTEPPS too, because like you said, this is a military based program concept, and I would not be surprised if they're integrating this into their workflows as well. So, again, if you work at a VA hospital, I mean, understanding TeamSTEPPS is probably something that would benefit you if you're going to go into that environment.
Yeah, it's a small thing that you can do. Speaking the same language will quickly establish confidence. It'll let the people know that, oh, they know something. They know the same thing that I know. And then that bridges one of the gaps, in the barriers of communication that just makes your job a little bit easier. So it's totally applicable even if you're working with people who don't know TeamSTEPPS. It's still the English language. It's just training to put the English language in a specific order so that, one, you speak the information clearly, concisely, and you want to front load the information. You wouldn't want to say, one of the examples that I use is if you were trying to call out EMG activity, you wouldn't say, doctor, I think, I think I might be seeing some activity in the right hand. They've stopped listening to you. There's no chance once you started talking and you weren't speaking with confidence and clarity, and you were saying and you put the meat of that information, the actual content at the end of the sentence, that message didn't get delivered. So saying that a different way, such as, doc, I got EMG activity in the right hand, it's the same information, but delivered more effectively. And it's fast. It alerts them that, hey, I have to listen to it. They don't have a chance to tune you out because you put all the information in the beginning. Little tools like that, which are actually not so little when you use them in the right situation. And what I love about TeamSTEPPS is it kind of gives you the tools, but it also gives you permission to use those tools because you know that it's about the patient. It's not about your relationship with the surgeon in that moment. And I'm sure you've had this experience. I certainly have, where you're the one delivering the bad news. You're the one telling the surgeon about a change in the motorvoc potentials or something related to positioning. And, the surgeons don't want to hear that. Of course they don't. It's bad news. They want to know that everything is stable to baseline and that everything's fine and they can get on with their day and go have their lunch afterwards without worrying about it. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. And when you're in those situations and you deliver the information calmly but assertively, no matter how they react in the moment, it's important to deliver the information. And at least in my experience, afterwards, they have always come up and thanked me. They've always said, thank you for being here. We appreciate what you did, even though when I said it, the reception wasn't as warm. We'll put it that way. But that's our job. We have to get comfortable with that. And if you're not comfortable in the operating room like that, maybe neuromonitoring, isn't the right career path. But for a lot of us, it is. And, it's an incredibly rewarding career path for me, at least. Just being able to actually participate in these meaningful events in a human's life, such as, a major surgery, and then knowing that I affected it for the better, that the outcome was better because I was there, because I caught that positional change, or I saw that a nerve was being stretched and I told the surgeon to, ease up on it for 30 seconds, and knowing that that made a difference and that translated to post-operative outcomes in a positive way, that's what makes it worth it for me.
Yes.
I love getting to go to the actual Laboure college campus and doing these boot camps. Laboure has had their monitoring program. I joined I got in contact with them in 2015 when it was being created. And I think we started in 2016. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's when we started. I've been with them since the very beginning, and it's an online program, right? It's designed for working professionals who are trying to enter into neuromonitoring. And even in some cases, people who are already working in neuromonitoring, but maybe haven't had a proper, foundational knowledge base given to them. No further comments on that, but they come to us and they need the information, and it's mainly an online program, right? So we have an online portal in all of my classes, as well as our other instructors. It's all through the internet. It's all online videos and interactive stuff online. But as you can imagine, you can't learn to do this job online. The job is in the operating room. We physically have to place electrodes, and we physically have to plug them into pieces of equipment, and we have to physically be present in the OR. So the boot camp is really the first time that the students have the chance to, get hands-on and place electrodes and plug in the equipment. And we do all sorts of simulations and, practicing, as well as, some didactic lectures. But, it's always fun to see these students start to get it, because there's always that point in our training and education where the wheels start to turn, and that click happens, and you have that aha moment. Mm-hmm. It's never in the beginning. It's usually sometime in the operating room when you actually get to see these tests that you've been studying in action. And the first time that you adjust your filter parameters, and you see what aliasing looks like, or you see how adjusting your artifact rejection parameters changes what's coming into your, changes these squiggly lines. That's usually when the aha moment comes. And we try to give those moments to the students in person, because there's no other way. You just can't do it entirely remotely. You have to have that, you got to get hands-on. You have to feel what it feels like to plug an electrode in to a pod or to a stim box. Make sure everything is connected, make sure everything's turned on. You don't want to be in simulator mode. So we show the students what it looks like, what it feels like, and how to be as prepared as possible for the operating room. Mm-hmm. So, what I'm trying to focus on as an educator is creating that content, creating those educational lessons. And my mantra, is I can't expect someone to know something if I haven't taught it to them. Mm-hmm. So having foundational basic lessons all the way through the more advanced, I think is incredibly important. And I already know that there are, the companies out there that have their own in-house educational programs. There's ours with, at Accurate Neuromonitoring, and all the other large companies have their own version of it. But it's always up to the organization to kind of say this person is ready to do the more complicated or the more advanced. So what I'm focusing on doing is creating a program, that prepares people for that progression, that has the standard information all the way through the more advanced. And the way that we do it, with Accurate, is you have to demonstrate proficiency before you move on to the next one. So there is a little bit of a progression to, making your way from, basic spine all the way, through, thyroids and carotids and lateral spine, all the way up to, motor mapping, spinal cord mapping, D waves. And I think that's important. I think that you need to have a pathway for the student to go from 0 to 10. You need to have the resources in place for the student to actually learn, because you can't expect them to know something if you don't teach it to them. I did do one other fun thing at the Southern Society meeting, also ASNM in Dallas this past year. Yeah. And this gets back to the whole idea of, interactive events, interactive lectures. So we did what's called, I made an escape room, right? I called it Escape the OR. And it was a troubleshooting exercise that was designed to, mimic an escape room activity, but using actual neuromonitoring related problems and, plugging things into neuromonitoring hardware, while at the same time, being fun. This came from Dr. Faisal Jahangiri's suggestion when he after having gone through many boot camps with him and figuring out what works and what doesn't work for interactive things. He was programming the ASNM Dallas content, and he said, can I do a game? Can we do like a Jeopardy or a game show? And I didn't want to have everyone sitting for the whole thing. The last thing I wanted was, because this was going to be on Sunday, I knew this was going to be the last day of the conference, having people sitting through, long days of dense, valuable knowledge, but dense knowledge. Once you get to Sunday, you're kind of, exhausted, you're tapped out. And so I didn't want to have the lights down and me sitting up at the lectern, asking questions to a bunch of people who are falling asleep. So we created this escape room experience so that people could actually, get up off their feet, troubleshoot and work in teams that they don't usually work with. So, I paired people up randomly, and we had combination locks that they had to try to figure out the combination to. They had to look through ICD-10 coding sheets and figure out, which diagnosis it was, so that maybe that was the combination to this lock that I was looking at. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So
that is awesome.
Creating that kind of interactive experience is, those are the kinds of things that I'm excited to do more of. And, one of the problems with escape rooms or puzzles in general is you can't do the same one over and over again, right? I have to continuously create new puzzles and new experiences, because if you know the solution to the puzzle, it's no fun, and it defeats the purpose. So that's definitely something I'm working on for future events. So stay tuned, and hopefully, we'll see that at some upcoming conferences. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun to do, and a lot of fun to watch the chaos. When you know the answer and you see people try to figure it out. Yes, that's good fun. And that kind of makes things worth it for me, as an educator and someone that's now getting out there and speaking and getting in front of audiences, changing it up and providing people with new experiences, delivering perhaps the same content in new ways, I think is important.
Absolutely. And it looked like such a fun time, and you could see how engaged people were. I mean, what a great way to just test people's knowledge and just have them kind of like sharpen their learning skills, but also working in with unfamiliar groups and communicate. Again, going back to communication and just working together to communicate effectively as a team to try to solve a problem quickly. That's just a fantastic tool and just a really fun experience. So I'm sure everyone down there enjoyed it. It looked like a blast. So hopefully we'll see more of this. Hopefully you're going to generate something like this again. Like you said, I mean, you have to change up the solutions a little bit, but I mean, if you're creative enough to implement the first one, I'm sure the second one will be a hit too, and probably even better. So looking forward to seeing that pop back up again.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
The SSCT conferences, it's a fantastic event. They do such a good job with that. I mean, it's so impressive. Like you said, that's on the level of a national event. And, it's such a great learning experience. Obviously your talk was fantastic, and you were on a stage with so many big names in our field that, were contributing so many good talks. Rich Vogel, Faisal, I could go on. Dr.
Justin Silverstein.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And, just so many of the big names.
David Allison. Gene Balzer. It's very humbling to be even on a list with these people. I don't know how that happened. I certainly grew up going to these conferences and seeing all these names, and I definitely, I've realized, we're all just people, right? Just because you've seen their names before doesn't mean these people aren't approachable. And I'm very fortunate to have developed friendships with a lot of these people. And it's just because, you just go and talk to them, and that's really all it takes. We're all just people working in this. And, if anyone out there wants to come up and talk to me at the next conference, please, I encourage you to do so. Don't feel like it's something that is untouchable. We're not untouchable. We're just people, just like everyone else.
Making connections and networking is so important for learning and advancing your career options.
It applies to neuromonitoring, and again, I mean, one of the things I really want to drive with the IONM for Life project in general is this idea that, don't be afraid to step up, reach out. Don't be afraid that you're going to look foolish, that you're going to ask a foolish question or look bad in some capacity. Get out there and talk to someone, make a connection, try to develop mentorship relationships. And, again, you make mistakes, you can learn from them, so can other people. But it's okay to just step out of your comfort zone and grow yourself as a professional and a person. So what you're saying, Dave, is so important. But again, like, you belong on that stage because communication is so important alongside all the other amazing things that a lot of those people were going to be teaching at that conference. So communication should be up there on that stage for how important it is for what we do. So, to me, it makes sense. And I thank you for what you do. And I thank you for being on the show today. This has been very enlightening. We'll put up some contact information for Dave if you want to reach out to him. So Dave, thank you so much. It's been a
My pleasure, Scott. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep.